As the war progressed, King Charles's armies suffered a number of setbacks. In Wales, which had been nominally at least royalist, people were beginning to tire of the struggle. They were tired of being constantly asked to provide men, money and provisions for the king's armies. The economy in Wales was being seriously damaged and hardship was growing.
But the spirits of the king's most loyal supporters were raised with the arrival of the battle-hardened Prince Rupert of the Rhine in 1644. He was made President of Wales and proved himself an efficient organiser. But his time here was brief. He soon had to leave, marching north with a force to confront a major threat. And he was defeated at the key battle of Marston Moor.
His departure, taking with him troops that had been raised in the border areas of Wales and England, left the Royalists weakened. Parliament saw an opportunity and seized it. It captured the strategic town of Oswestry just over the border in England. So the way was open into mid and north Wales. But there were other obstacles to overcome.
In September 1644, the Roundheads marched west, led by important leaders of the conflict in Wales. General Sir Thomas Middleton and his brother-in-law Colonel Thomas Mytton quickly seized Newtown, where they captured a huge quantity of gunpowder which was being sent from Bristol to Royalists in Liverpool. They then headed towards Montgomery. It was a very small town, but strategically located for access to mid and north Wales. Montgomery town was easy enough to take, but its formidable castle, perched high on a hilltop, was a much tougher prospect. Built in the 1200s by King Henry III, it was described by one parliamentary general as one of the goodliest and strongest places that I ever looked upon. The castle was held by Lord Herbert of Cherbury, a very colourful and cultured man who was then in his 60s. Oxford educated, he spoke half a dozen languages, had been a soldier in mainland European conflicts, had fought duels, and had become an ambassador. He wrote a biography of King Henry VIII and produced various other works. He was described as a nobleman of great literary abilities, but exceedingly vain and of eccentric habits.
In his later years, Lord Herbert was in poor health and evidently had little interest in the Civil War. He was supposedly a royalist, and yet he had turned down Prince Rupert's offer to garrison his castle with royalist troops. And the time came that Middleton ordered Lord Herbert to surrender.
And to show that he meant business, a petard, an explosive device, was placed at the castle gates, ready to blow them wide open. Lord Herbert quickly agreed to terms, including that his valuable library would be protected from ransacking and looting.
The loss of strategic Montgomery was a serious blow to the Royalists. Within days, they organised a counterattack. A force marched in from Shrewsbury, and they surprised a group of foraging Roundhead soldiers who fled back to the castle. The Royalists prepared for a siege, digging earthworks all around the castles, including trenches. Colonel Mytton was left in charge of the castle with a force of 500 men, and Sir Thomas Middleton rode away to get reinforcements.
Parliamentary troops were brought from as far as Yorkshire and, under the overall command of Sir John Meldrum, a force of 3,500 foot soldiers and cavalry neared Montgomery on the 17th of September. Sir John's deputy was Thomas Middleton, the owner of Chirk Castle, which at that time was being held for the king. The Royalists had also sought reinforcements. Lord John Byron had marched from Chester, gathering a force of around 4,500 men. The scene was set for a battle. Lord Byron split his force. While some were left to protect the siege works around the castle, most were deployed on high ground on the site of an ancient hill fort to the northwest. Sir John Meldrum halted his Roundhead troops and cavalry 2 miles north of the castle, below the modest River Camlad, a tributary of the River Severn.
The following day, on the 18th of September, there was initially no sign of movement on either side. But then the Parliament forces sent a sizable number of men away to gather provisions, and the Royalists saw an opportunity. Lord Byron ordered an attack.
He aimed to seize the Salt Bridge over the Camlad to prevent a Roundhead escape route. The Royalist cavalry charged and, although details are sketchy, seem to have gained the initiative. The Royalist infantry also pushed forward. Parliament's cavalry and foot soldiers were suddenly on the defensive. Sir William Fairfax, the brother of Sir Thomas Fairfax, Parliament's supreme military leader, was killed in the fighting. But then a Major General Lothian rallied his musketeers. They mowed down advancing Royalists. The foraging Roundheads may also have returned to join battle. There was a counter-attack. Middleton's cavalry started to get the better of the Royalist horsemen. They broke and fled. Roundhead infantry under Sir William Brereton advanced and broke through the Royalist foot soldiers, and then Colonel Mytton, still inside the castle, opened the gates so that his men flooded out and overwhelmed the Royalists guarding the trenches.
The battle lasted only about an hour, and it was a disaster for the Royalists. 500 Royalist troops had been killed and 1,500 had been captured. Parliament's forces lost about 100 men. This was the largest battle fought in Wales during the conflict, and soon after the parliamentarians captured nearby Powys Castle, thereby securing a very strong presence in this part of Wales.
From then on, it was a story of parliamentary raids and Royalist decline in mid and North Wales. The sparse population at that time grew ever more weary of the war and repeated demands for men, money and cattle. King Charles suffered major defeats and was totally defeated by June 1646 in what was this first phase of the civil wars. Then peace returned to Wales, for a short while anyway. Neither Mytton nor Middleton had any military experience before becoming commanders, but both proved themselves competent. Mytton went on to capture more Welsh castles and, in 1645, was promoted to Major General and made Parliament's commander of North Wales. Major General Thomas Middleton had sat as an MP in England and later for Denbighshire. He strongly opposed the trial and execution of King Charles, and in 1659 joined an ill-fated Royalist conspiracy, after which he went into hiding. On the restoration of the monarchy in 1660, he recovered his estates, including the by then much damaged Chirk Castle. Lord John Byron, the first Baron Byron, had sat as an MP for an English constituency. He earned his title when he distinguished himself in battle, but later experienced several defeats. He surrendered Carnarvon Castle in 1646 and fled to Paris, where he died in exile.
As for Montgomery Castle, Parliament wanted to make absolutely sure that it could never again be used by the Royalists. They therefore ordered its destruction, and they did a pretty thorough job. So what we are left with today are its ruins and, of course, an important chapter in Welsh history.